Okie doke. Welcome. I hope you listened to this entire video. Otherwise, you're a piece of shit. Um, this has been a great week. I've been working on the AI and learning. I've been learning bits and pieces about um, moving AI controlled actors in Unreal Engine since I started learning Unreal Engine, but only since this past week have I really been able to kind of build a pretty simple, AI logic that works. But instead of just talking about it, let me show you. So these destructible barriers are now targets of the AI, and the AI will respond to them based on certain conditions. So I'm going to spawn a few zombies. They'll run towards me. They'll break the barrier, and they'll keep running at me very sassily. Some of them are Karens, and they'll kill me unless I kill them first. And then I can go up to the barrier and repair it and prepare for the next wave. I turned off the spawning of the normal automatic bot spawns for now, just so I can demonstrate this. So let's, you might be thinking, okay, that's pretty cool, I guess. Seems pretty simple. Why are you showing this off? Well, because the interesting part doesn't come into play when you're just having a zombie spawn and find a barrier that's destructible, which is pretty cool. I mean, you gotta admit that's pretty cool. And then they keep chasing me, or they actually retarget rather when the barrier is destroyed. The fun part comes into play when you talk about, for example, what if I spawn zombies and as I'm running away, I create a new barrier? Well, now they're overlapping and they're going to re-destroy it. And then they're going to keep chasing me after it's gone. And it may not seem intuitive why that's why I'm emphasizing it and making it seem like a big deal. But it actually is it has been quite a task to get those things to work pretty well. Work pretty seamlessly. Let's see, what else do I have to show off? There's also the concept of, what target should the zombies find when they spawn? And right now, like, my intention is to have them find barriers, when all of them really, to find barriers when they spawn. If they don't have any barriers, none of them are valid, quote unquote, meaning in this case they're all just destroyed, then they're just going to find players. But if they are valid and they're nearby, they'll target the barrier first. Now, if the zombie's targeting a barrier and it's destroying it, and this may not work right now, but it has in the past, and I just probably need to clean it up if it's not. And I damage the zombie. This is when they'll retarget me. They don't do it right now, but you'll just have to trust me that it's been working, and I overlooked it. This video is actually late already just because I wanted to make a few last minute changes. So yeah, so the zombies will retarget when you damage them when they're in the middle of an activity like that. So the zombies, when they spawn, they find the nearest barrier, and then if they overlap with another barrier after retargeting to the player, then they'll attack that. So I'll demonstrate here. So I'm going to spawn a zombie right here, and they'll go to town on this barrier. And now at the top left, if you can read it, it says state equals find player. Now if it overlaps a barrier in the pursuit of the player, then it's going to automatically retarget the barrier and destroy that until it finds until it's destroyed or it's damaged by a player that it has a valid path towards. And that's kind of important, and that's maybe not 100% quite there yet, but it's an important distinction. It's important to emphasize that the zombie will retarget if it is either the barrier is destroyed or it has a valid path to the player. Because if you could picture this, if the zombie's over here and it's attacking the barrier and I'm on the other side and close and I do little love taps and then it targets me and then it retargets and then I can get it into this weird feedback loop of not doing anything and just being in indecision and me, you know, sort of gaming the system. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess it's maybe not as spectacular as it is in my head, but I'm gonna show you what the logic is for the zombie AI. So I'm gonna sort of gloss over a lot of stuff that got me to this point, and just jump right into the zombie blueprint or the zombie class. And this is an overview of the zombie class. And the begin play, it's spawned. There's a few things like setting the scale of the zombie with a little bit of variation. It has a walk speed with a little bit of variation between 125 and 150. And then it goes on to get a reference to its AI controller. And it's got I got some debug stuff that I can turn on, off and on at will, in case I run into problems. Then, of course, over here there's handle damage, apply physics, and these are a server function just to make it so ragdoll physics replicate to, or at least occur on clients. They're not actually, the bone positions and all that aren't replicated to remote machines, but at least every client will have a physics simulation to have cool exploding zombie Karens. So that's the begin play and that stuff. And then of course you've got the overlap check. So the overlap is really just every single time a zombie overlaps something else, it's going to have an overlap type of it's going to fire off. It's going to be like it provided the object is allowed to accept overlap events, it's going to fire off. Okay, anything. Could be me, it could be a pillar, it could be the cream machine, doesn't matter. So when there's a overlap check, it's going to run through this sequence just really quickly. It's going to get a bunch of references. I made this little macro. It just gets a bunch of references that correspond to the zombie AI controller and a few other things, but don't really need to get tied up with that. It's going to ask, is there a proper overlap? Are the needed overlaps there for me to proceed into a timer or it's kind of like a tick. It executes every 0.1 second right now, but for all intents and purposes, it's basically like happening like every frame in another in a lot of games that in a lot of contexts you're gonna run something every frame that's really important, like the AI. And this could use some optimization, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. So then there's some more overlap info that I collapsed. I don't really need to go over that. And I ask the question here: is overlapping barrier wow, I can't fucking write or shit. If. Never mind. I'm not an idiot. If overlapping barrier is ... and then it asks the question, is it valid? And 2, is it not destroyed? Which never ever fails to confuse the shit out of me. But that's why it all works, and it's all neatly put in here, because I don't want to have to freaking deal with the is not true is not type of bullshit. So, and then it goes into this branch, and if these two conditions are true, then set this overlapped barrier. So like I showed you before, when I go over here, when the zombie spawns, it's going to find a target barrier. Now this is not the overlap. This is the barrier it finds in the begin play. Okay, but when this is destroyed and it starts chasing the player, when something comes between its path, between me and the zombie, and it's a barrier, that's an overlap. And that's an overlap barrier. And that's what the reference is going to be when it, that's what the reference is going to be set at when it overlaps. Okay. So we got all this cool stuff squared away. It's setting it in the zombie controller. It's and it's also setting the zombie AI state, which I'll show you, which is also originates in the controller too. So all that is just the overlap, and then it sets this timer, which again executes 0.1 seconds, and it goes attack something. And this is basically the zombie state condition, or the zombie behavior condition. It basically is something that is all squared away in the zombie blue class and it communicates to the zombie controller. So it basically just is kind of saying, what do I do? Well, you can attack a target player, you can attack a target barrier, or you can attack a target overlapping barrier. And every 0.1 seconds, it's going to run through these functions. And each one of these functions has a little bit of stuff to cover. I'm not going to go over all these. And in fact, they're kind of similar, and I'm going to optimize these at some point. But I do want to look at attack target barrier, because this is the first reference, the first target that the zombie gets when it spawns. So when the zombie spawns, it says, am I allowed to, this part of the code or program, this blueprint, it asks, am I allowed to attack? Am I allowed to loop my attack animation? Am I overlapping the correct actors? So this is basically, I should have probably led with this, but this is talking about the moment when the zombie's ready to actually attack. It's got the valid reference, it's within range, and it's going to actually deal damage. It asks these questions. Probably did it kind of backwards, but that's fine. I'll go. This works fine. And if those questions are all answered to the satisfaction of the code, then it says, okay, then I'll apply damage once and wait until I'm allowed to attack again. So this is do once node. It does it once. It turns off apply damage in the animation blueprint, and which I don't want to get into. And then it does the actual health change. It subtracts 10 from the health, and then it does a 0.3 second delay. And the sequence node is because there's a debug over here, and then it goes all the way back and it resets. And that's really just so it can only apply damage once before getting permission to do it again. So that's attacking the target barrier, and it's basically the same for the target player and for the target overlapping barrier. So in the zombie controller, in begin play, this is when the zombie spawns. The actual, visual, or I'm sorry, not the not the visual skeletal mesh, but this is actually think of it like the brain of the zombie. When the brain of the zombie possesses this character model, it does a few things right when it's spawned. It runs through a few things. It gets a reference. It binds an event to taking damage, and it runs through these two functions: find nearest player and find nearest barrier. So find nearest player is basically it's just a quick get all actors of a class, which is basically just means the minute it spawns, it's gonna find everything that's a human, like everything that's a player, and it's going to get all those, and it's going to put them into a for loop, and it's going to put them in an array, in a big group, and it's going to start going through the group and saying, okay, you're good, you're good, you're good, you suck, or whatever. And it's going to start kind of separating them in ways that I want them to. So it's going to find that group, and it's going to say, all right, I want the distance to the player in this specific part of the array, and I want to see if it's less than the closest player distance, which is just an arbitrary number I can set. And if it is, then let's set that as the target player. And it'll right after that, I'll run through this other function, which is basically the same, and it'll run through, get all actors of the class, but instead of players, it'll get the destructible barriers, those wooden things that the zombies are attacking, and it'll throw those in an array. It'll do a for loop, and it'll find an instance and say, I want the distance to that barrier. And if it's less than my closest barrier distance, another arbitrary float variable, then, and if that's true, then I want to set that as my target. So it's basically saying, let's just find the closest barrier. And then this bind event, I don't need to go over because this is I need to do some work on that. And here's I just call it the zombie behavior tick, and this is also happening basically on a per tick basis. And it's this thing called switch on zombie AI state, which is this enumeration that I have. And there's 3 states that I have right now for the zombies. There's find player, find barrier, and overlapping barrier. And it's going to run through these. It's going to run through these based on the state. Okay, so in the beginning, the default state is find barrier, like I said earlier. So immediately it's going to find a barrier. So that means it's going to execute this exec node, or this exec pin, and it's going to say find destructible barrier. And immediately it's going to say, do I have a valid target barrier that was assigned previously? That means has begin play already happened, and we're accessing this function after begin play. Do I need to retarget? If that answer is no, and I already have a valid reference, then let's see if that reference is identical to the aforementioned reference. And if it is identical, then we can carry on. If it's not identical, then I'm going to set my current target as the target barrier, which is basically my current target is the universal, what am I actually going to move towards? And of course, if the target barrier reference that I have, if it's not valid, or in other words, if it's destroyed, if it has 0 health, then let's just set the zombie AI state to find player. So it says my target is not valid, so I'm just going to switch to chasing players. And of course, this little thing says, you know, if the target barrier is equal to, if the target barrier is equal to my current target, or I'm sorry, is not equal to my current target, then my barrier reference is not equal to what I'm currently targeting, so I'm just going to set that reference as my current target right now. Okay. And then this is going to fire anyway. This sequence node is going to fire anyway. Why? Because this is happening on a per tick. The zombie state hasn't changed. So every tick, this is going to fire this. It's going to pulse through barrier, 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 lightning bolt, lightning bolt. And it's going to fire through this sequence. It's going to say, it's going to first do a delay, which this is actually redundant. I don't need this, but I'm keeping it because it could be helpful later. And the next sequence, it's gonna do another do once. It's gonna do that for loop. It's gonna find the nearest barrier because it's kind of has to in order for the move goal to change. And it's going to take the nearest one, that instance, and it's going to run through this function in that blueprint class, and it's going to ask if it has no health. This is really important, and the reason this has to happen, it seems kind of expensive, but the truth is like you kind of have to do it, because if it I need to know if it has no health, because if it does have no health, then I shouldn't be chasing something that has no health. It would look like basically someone attacking the air. So if that condition, if no health is true, then it needs to find the player. That's what it does here. So I'm going to find the nearest barrier to me and move towards it. This is what this logic is for. And if it has no health is true, then I'm going to find the player, because I don't want to run after destroyed shit. I'm going to go kill stuff that's still alive. And if it's false and it does have health, then I'm going to take a dump on that destructible barrier until it's dead or someone else damages me. So I'm going to keep targeting that thing until some other weird stuff happens. And until then, I'm also going to not attack the player, and I'm going to definitely allow myself to attack the barrier. And these things are basically just checks, so that I can't damage can't be applied multiple times, and that someone can't be damaged simultaneously by the zombie can't damage the barrier and the player simultaneously. And of course, this again, this is a tick. So picture, pew 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 pew, just very very rapidly pulsing through, and if that once that barrier is destroyed, then wham, it goes to zombie state, find player. And that zombie state, of course, is here. Zombie state. If it's find player, then it goes to find player. So now we're pulsing find player, find player, find player. And it's asking kind of similar questions. It's running through, is my target player valid? Is it still alive? Is it equal to my current target? If not, then set the current target to my target player reference. If it is true, then just keep pulsing through. Keep pulsing through. First check, is it alive? If it's not alive, then wait. Remove that player reference from the array that we established in the begin play, and then set a new target player at random, at least for now. It's valid, and set that as a new target, because we can't chase players in a multiplayer game that are dead and not in the game. If the reference isn't there, then the zombies shouldn't just be standing around. They should search for new player targets. And then of course it does that function, find the nearest player, and it runs through some logic, and if this fails, which I don't want to go over that. If this fails, it'll well, you know what, I will go over this. So when it does this move to actor, it has this ePath following request result enum, which is similar to the zombie state enumeration that I had. And this is just basically saying once this move to execution is issued, then the AI basically says immediately upon getting the execution, is it failed already at goal or request successful? It's like, so for instance, like if you told me to go over there, to run over there, then I would look and immediately say, no, I can't do it because there's no path. Or I would say, I'm already here, stupid. Or I'd say, I understand, I'll go. So it's not the return value is not the actual result of the pathing of the movement. It's really just whether the AI can, how it interprets that the instructions immediately. It's going to say, I can't do it, because it might say failed if there's no navigational path at the target or something. If it's already there, it'll say I'm already here. And if it says that, hey, you know, I got your request, let's do it, let's rock, then it'll say request successful. Of course, it could still fail, you know, if something goes wrong, but that's not what this return value is for. That's a pretty important distinction, thing that I learned about these Move to nodes. So yeah, I mean that's most of it. I'll kind of I just kind of want to glance over one thing here with in the animation blueprint. The reason why this is a really, I don't know if this is the best way, or I know it's not the only way, but this is the way I decided to deal damage, is with these with an anim notify. So like, instead of having a zombie who attacks every second or every like 2 seconds, instead I have an animation, an attack animation, okay? And every time this animation reaches a certain part, certain frame, it executes a notify. And these notifies are basically allowing, or like, this is kind of like my own makeshift, like kind of like gate, I guess. So like on this frame, it's going to say on, which is basically like the open gate, meaning that a request is like ready to be heard. And then it's going to hit on frame 20, it's going to hit apply damage to target, which is basically the frame that damage will be able to be applied, which is not really where the contact point is, but it's close enough. And I'm kind of being generous and backing it off a little bit, just so that like it doesn't have to like be here to apply damage because of latency. I don't know if that's going to be an issue. So, and then of course it goes to off, and which is the close gate. So so on, or open, enter, and then close. Okay, and this could be really weird at first, but if you just think of it here and the animation blueprint event graph, the notifies on damage, apply to damage to target, and off damage are all events. You can use those notifies as events in the graph, and you could just say on damage, on that notification, I want to access my zombie blueprint, and I want to say damage allowed. And this is the zombie instance, because in my blueprint I cast to the zombie on a this is the animation blueprint ticks. So it's finding references. So it's looking for it's going through a lot of zombies at any given time, and it's finding out who can do damage based off of what frame they are in that attack animation. Because if they're not doing the attack animation, they can't deal damage. So it serves like kind of two purposes. One, it's visually and like in a gameplay sense, it's much more interesting to be attacked when something actually delivers a blow. And it's also, at least in my mind, at least so far, it seems more secure too. The way I've set it up right now. And I've labeled them too. So open, close, and then enter. And when it enters, it'll of course go. It will go to. Excuse me. It will attack the damaged player. So attack player here. Enter gate. So damage. Okay. So damage allowed. And if that's true, then it'll enter, and then it'll say apply damage. And apply damage is right here. So it's just that do once node executes once that completed exec pulses, it'll hit this off, and it'll give that small window. Of delivering a damage once until it's until it's reset. And you know what? I'm going to raise this up a little bit, just so there's even a more secure window of 0.3 seconds before it can deal damage again. But yeah, that is zombie AI in a nutshell, or my zombie AI in a nutshell. And there's a lot of things that I'm going to be doing going forward. For example, the sort of way that the zombies retarget players and barriers, I think, can be optimized. And I think one of the best ways I could probably do it is with some sort of event dispatcher, where the level, a blueprint or something, stores a reference to all the barriers, and there's a event dispatcher call when one of them dies, or one of them's low health, or one of the players is low health. So this is really only the beginning of a really interesting dynamic, kind of like zombie AI that's, not super complicated, but dynamic in the sense that it'll be interesting for players to, I hope, to play and to kind of be surprised. I'm hoping to have some variation. And I think last thing probably I want to show is the widget for when the game starts. I don't think I mentioned this on this take. It's basically when the game starts, the rounds start counting up, in the top center of the screen. It'll list whatever round or whatever. I don't know exactly how I'm gonna show that. It probably won't just be numbers like this, but it's still a good way of kind of showing off kind of what I'm going for, because it's a little spooky, it's a little ominous, and yeah, and actually, there is one other thing. I'm working on a new map. I'm working on really trying to design something that's going to be fun and isn't just sort of a testing area. And this is all very bare bones, but I'm using all the blueprints and all the stuff that I've been making for the past few months, and I'm going to be designing a level and play testing it pretty soon. And this also works in multiplayer. I'm not going to show it off now, because I know that everyone who started this video is still watching, and they're just like glued to the screen right now. So, but I don't want to torture you guys. I want to maybe save some more of that flavor for the next video or two or something. But yeah, Milo, congratulations. I love you. Drink lots of water and have a great day. Talk to you soon.